oil deals and mergers that are in focus today. This coming after Hess shareholders approving an all-stock merger with Chevron. ConocoPhillips agreeing to acquire Marathon Oil deal, making it the sector that rose in 2023, hitting the highest level in over a decade. That's according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. To break this all down, talk about some of the acquisitions that are taking place within the space, we want to bring in Rob Thummel. He is the Tortoise Portfolio Manager and Managing Director. Rob, it's great to see you here. So let's start with the Chevron and Hess shareholder vote there from Hess shareholders approving this deal to be sold to Chevron. Of course, this clears what is a major hurdle, but other hurdles remain when you talk about Exxon's involvement here, how exactly that could play out. Also, FTC approval, whether or not a deal is going to be approved. So I guess, how do you see what happens next, and how likely is it, do you think, that Chevron is going to acquire Hess?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So the next step is the FTC approval. I think you just saw ultimately the Exxon Pioneer deal got through the FTC process. So you'd probably expect that that this Chevron-Hess deal could obviously jump back over that hurdle. But the biggest hurdle is, as you have been talking about, which is the what's going to be the arbitration. And the arbitration and the result of the arbitration drives everything. If the arbiter rules that Exxon and CNOOC are entitled to a right of first refusal, then this deal will be off, because as everybody's highlighted, the crown jewel asset of this transaction is the Guyana asset. And so now, what's the probability? That's really difficult to really handicap. And the reason is this: is nobody has read the joint operating agreement except for lawyers at Exxon, at CNOOC, at Hess, and obviously probably at Chevron. And so everybody has their interpretation. I think ultimately, though, it's probably good to have Chevron as a partner. I think Exxon would recognize that, as well as CNOOC. And so I do think that the transaction can happen. But it's really predicated on, probably a handful of words in this kind of super secret joint operating agreement that nobody's been able to get their hands on.
So without the Guyana assets, what is the evaluation of this price tag for the deal?
Well, it goes down a lot. I think Hess is up probably 20% since the transaction was announced, maybe even a little bit more than that. What I would say is it's not as if Guyana is still worth a decent amount, and that's really the valuation. Is what's the valuation? And that's really part of the arbitration. Is what is the value that Chevron is placing on Hess, and does Exxon want to and CNOOC want to pursue and pay that type of value? But that takeover premium would come down. The Hess share price would come down if the transaction, or if the arbitrator would rule in favor of Exxon in this case sometime. And we expect that sometime probably early next year.
I think the question is, if Chevron is not able to acquire the Guyana assets, does this deal then fall apart? Would Chevron have any interest in Hess outside of the assets in Guyana?
I think the answer to that is no. I think Mike Wirth, CEO of Chevron, has made it very, very clear that without the Guyana asset, the company is not interested in pursuing the acquisition and the merger with Hess without the Guyana asset. Now, obviously, things can change, but ultimately, the Guyana asset is the critical asset for this transaction to occur. So without it, I don't think the transaction occurs.